This is Dr. Mobeen Sayed from drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. Today we have some stellar guests that you have been asking us to have with us. So we have Dr. Nader Pourhassan and Dr. Scott Kelly from CytoDyn. So let's start. Dr. Nader, once again, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So for the completion's sake, so you have been on our show a few times, but for the completion's sake, can you please introduce yourself, Scott, and your company?
Sure. I have been in CytoDyn since 2008. I am currently the Chief Executive Officer. I found Leronlimab from Progeny, purchased it, and started developing it and became the CEO of CytoDyn. Dr. Scott Kelly is my favorite board member. He's the chairman of the board. He's the chief medical officer, head of business development. And this is the first time I'm on the show with Dr. Kelly. So why don't you please, Dr. Kelly, explain a little bit about yourself and background.
Sure. And thank you for having me, by the way. I really appreciate it. So a little bit about myself. So I have been practicing medicine since 2002 and left in April of this year to join CytoDyn to pursue all the many indications of Leronlimab. I first became interested in this company in 2011, and particularly interested when Nader purchased Leronlimab in October of 2012, because I wanted to look at this molecule and see how much it was really capable of. And so I started looking at different ways to explore the pathway of CCR5, including everything from obviously HIV, but then cancer and Nash and GVHD, et cetera. So Nader had asked me to join the board, and I did in April of 2017, and then became chairman in December of 2018. So I became the chief medical officer and head of business development in April of this year.
Awesome. So welcome both. Thank you very much for your time. So we are about 1 million cool beans, very, very much interested in various therapies that we are looking at nowadays, especially in the context of COVID-19. And that is how we found you, Dr. Pourhassan, about the COVID-19 and Leronlimab. Of course, Leronlimab and CytoDyn is much more than just the COVID-19 at this time, but that is the front and center of everybody's mind. So once again, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your time. I wanted to inform the cool beans and some of the newer cool beans who send me this message all the time that what interest do you have with CytoDyn? So some of the folks ask me that, hey, you must have owning some shares and you're trying to help with that, or some folks say you may have a financial interest. So I want to be clear and provide a disclaimer. I do not have, and please don't be offended, Scott or Nader, I do not have any financial interest, shares or finances or any favors or any other such biases. My basic bias has been what it is with other things as well, and that is how can we find therapies that can help more people at this time. Whatever these are, it may that be Remdesivir or hydroxychloroquine or Leronlimab, I am on the side of figuring out how do we manage and help the world get out of this evil time. So that is it. That is my disclaimer. So please spare your comments trying to figure out what is my interest here. So with this, let's start. So Dr. Nader, if I can put you on the spot and request you, give us an update, general overview of the lay of the land at this time. What is CytoDyn doing? What are various things, for example, cancer and HIV and COVID-19 and Nash? What is the current update from your point of view?
So usually I give the update by talking about HIV, but because that's a path that we have for approval. But because COVID-19 could pass HIV's timeline for approval and we are in the pandemic, let me start with COVID-19. We did a study, mild to moderate. It was a phase 2 study, and it was an 86 patient, 84 evaluable. And the results came out, and we said we had a fantastic results in our opinion, but the opinion of certain people were it wasn't fantastic results. Well, for that population, we didn't find anybody who was successful getting approval, because for mild to moderate patients recover very quickly. But with that said, we have had 2 endpoints, and we got a top-line report We had a serious adverse events and adverse events that was much less than Leronlimab, which addressed the safety of the product. And it's a small population, 84, 86 is nothing compared to Remdesivir of 5,000 patients. So with that, we went to FDA and we asked, here's our top-line report. What do you think about emergency use authorization? So we requested emergency use authorization in a non-formal way. So in the case they want to say no, we don't get a red flag on our record saying rejected. So that was a very kind way to go forward with FDA, and FDA said, gave us suggestion. That result also gave us total understanding of our product in some COVID-19 patients, and that's very valuable, very huge result for us. We built on that a phase 3, which is COVID-19 patients for moderate. So we are in a mix of going with phase 3. We asked FDA, FDA said, let's talk. So we're working on that. So that awarded us a path to approval for moderate patients. We also are looking at long hauler, which Dr. Scott Kelly will get to it at the time when we talk about blood-brain barrier. And that long hauler study also came because some of our physicians in this study realized that there were symptoms that is related to long hauler that was not in their patients. They went away. So Dr. Scott Kelly will talk about it. And then the most important thing is CD12. We have an interim analysis, the first product in the world that is in a phase 3 that could have a positive interim analysis with the primary endpoint being mortality, the most crucial primary endpoint. So we are getting close to that point, and I'm very excited about going to details of all of these races in this call. But one of the major things that we just got right now, as of an hour ago, as I told you, Dr. Drbeen, we just received a congratulation letter from Therapeutic of COVID-19 conference. Our CD10, the mild to moderate population, just got approved for a 15-minute oral presentation by Dr. Harish Setamraju. That's a good accomplishment. Obviously, the results are good to them that gave us that kind of setting. Now, we will have a press release going out in a few hours. So that takes care of the COVID, which is very huge for our future in this year. The next thing is, well, is this product have approval coming up or not? And that's HIV. In regards to HIV, we have done fantastic job hitting our primary endpoint, getting the BLA ready. Unfortunately, we had refused to file letter, but that refused to file letter says you need more data that you had, but you didn't have it when when we submitted BLA because the trial that they asked for safety was not completed. With that said, that means we have all the data. So in my opinion, we have 100% chance of getting approval. You have a drug that's going to get approval. Why am I saying, in my opinion, 100%? Nothing is 100%, right? So because if you look at FDA.gov, if you look at drug.com and read about it, you will see that 5% of the product in phase 1 get approved. 25% of phase 2 get approved. Phase 3, if you hit your primary endpoint and FDA lets you submit BLA or NDA, you have 85% getting approved. Where does that 15% come from that you could fail? It all comes because of the safety. That 15% they failed. Gilead just failed with the blockbuster product because there is safety. We've got problem with manufacturing last minute from approval. We have both of those problems solved already. So with that said, we feel 100% confidence that we will get approval, especially when it comes going to other countries like MHRA and EU, European regulatory. So we have multiple shots at the goal. Now, that's our combination therapy. We have monotherapy. We have prevention therapy. And then we have the cure project, which I can't wait to tell everybody that if we get the first patient that needs bone marrow transplant and has HIV, get Leronlimab. And if we can duplicate what Timothy Brown had, which was bone marrow transplant from a Delta 32 patient, we have the first cure of HIV for a small subpopulation of HIV. It's a huge start for cure. We have that in our hand to go forward. That's a huge possibility. Now, that takes care of HIV and COVID-19. Let's go to cancer. As of a few minutes ago, or a few hours ago, I got the results of some of our basket trial data. We get those data every month. I just got 5 of the basket trials. The result looks positive. The camel number, which is the marker to show if the disease is progressing, has shown improvement. I called Dr. J. Lalazari and I said, well, it looks like we have a responder. Now, what the importance of this is, you need 5 patients to be able to go to FDA and ask for breakthrough designation if your results are fantastic. We need to see what happens. But we're going forward completely with that. We have signed a work order with Creative Microtechnology to do a complete analysis of the data that we have so far and show if these markers are showing that Leronlimab is working. We had a guest in our conference called Daniel Adams, and the company is run by the lady who has a PhD from MIT and came up with these markers, which is excellent markers, and there's published data about it. That analysis would be around in few weeks. So that takes care of our cancer. Then we have Nash that Dr. Kelly will talk about in a minute. But having all of these potentials coming up to us this year alone, I don't think any company in the world has this much opportunity. And when people get scared of the naysayers talking, they need to focus. We're very close to getting approval, not just for COVID-19, but for HIV. But with that, Dr. Kelly, can you please talk about long hauler for COVID-19 and the blood-brain barrier that you have seen from animal study?
Sure. So in terms of the long haulers, there's a subpopulation of these patients that are infected with COVID-19, and they just never fully recover. And, there's I've seen different statistics, but somewhere between 75 to 87% of these patients that are hospitalized develop the long hauler syndrome. And what it consists of is tightness in the chest and shortness of breath and fatigue. And a lot of them describe brain fog. And when Nader was talking about our CD10 study, one of the things we realized is as early as 3 days, we were looking more for fever, myalgia, dyspnea, et cetera. But a lot of these patients started saying, I'm not having that feeling like the brain fog that I was having before. And that's not something we were really looking at. So we became very excited about this possibility. And then we had a lot of patients emailing us directly saying, I'm still having residual symptoms from COVID. So we believe this is a multi-system inflammatory disorder, and there's really no treatment options for these patients. And there's a lot of similarities between this and some of the other post-viral syndromes like, chronic fatigue syndrome and mononucleosis, et cetera. And that's why we want to really investigate this. And we think if we can mitigate these hyperimmune responses that we can help a lot of these patients with the long hauler syndrome.
Got it. And thank you very much for for your initial statements with us. One thing that I wanted to tell our cool beans, our viewers here, I am passionate about the long haulers as well at this time, because that is a group of folks who have gone through COVID-19, and there are now more than 30 million folks who have gone through this situation. And a lot of those folks have lingering symptoms. Now, these lingering symptoms are because there are dead virus RNA still sitting in macrophages and dendritic cells, and they're still being cleaned out. Or is it that the immune system has become dysregulated? Or is it that there is the virus still hanging out there and maybe just sitting there doing something? We're not very much sure for exactly what is happening, but one thing is clear, the inflammation is continuing. Otherwise, the symptoms will not be there. There is the damage and the inflammation that is continuing. So we are trying to figure out ways to help with the long haulers. And so I'm very excited about this. Dr. Kelly, tell me more about this. For the long hauler, is there any trial? Is there any, what is your preparation? Why do you feel that Leronlimab can help there? And where are you going? What is the preparation?
Well, it gets even more interesting. About the same time that we were hearing this with the patients at day 3 starting to that were having cognitive impairment and felt that they were clearing their cognitive impairment, we got word from, and this is where I'll talk about the blood-brain barrier, where we got word from, we were doing a study in macaques for HIV. And we found that not only did Leronlimab have 100% receptor occupancy peripherally, but in brain tissue, we found 70 to 75% receptor occupancy from Leronlimab.
Wow, so it crosses the blood-brain barrier?
It crosses the blood-brain barrier. And that's what I was trying to make sense of. Why are these people getting cognitively cleared and And then I started reading about how the COVID virus might actually cross might also actually cross the blood-brain barrier, how the COVID virus would. And then I started thinking about that and how impressive it is that we cross the blood-brain barrier. We can have an effect potentially to help a lot of people. So that was really the tipping point for us.
So tell me this, and I'm gonna dig deeper. Normally, peripheral antibodies, as far as I know, and my education or my knowledge may be lacking, normally antibodies do not cross the blood-brain barrier.
Correct.
Why does Leronlimab, what is special about this molecule that it crosses? Why does it cross the blood-brain barrier?
We don't know for sure. We don't know if it's crossing once attached to the CCR5 receptor or if it's going to cross through, but we know we've identified it in brain tissue. We know it's getting there, which is the important thing.
Oh, wow.
We're going to do some more studies on CSF and everything else to look.
Got it. So thank you very much for this. Dr. Nader Pourhassan, if I can now start with the questions that I have collected and the agenda.
Sure, but can I tell about the long hauler? So as of today, Dr. Kushdodi and Scott, I think you saw it in your email, as of just an hour ago or so, we got the synopsis for our protocol, and it's going to go to FDA tomorrow. And once FDA comes back and forth with us, we will have the protocol finalized most likely by the end of next week, and then we will start enrolling. And Scott, do you want to talk about how many patients you have from Dr. Chris Reckner ready to go with long hauler? So
it's going to go very quickly. We have a backlog of patients that are ready to join the trial. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and that's a phase two. So
correct.
If we get 70 patients, that's all we need perhaps.
Excellent. So before we go to the next agenda items, I enjoy the privilege of being unbiased because I can ask the questions. I don't have any financial interests here. So I'm going to ask two questions that may be a little pinchy, but I would like you to talk about it. Number one, I see this comment a lot from Cool Beans and from CytoDyn enthusiasts as well, that do you have sufficient funds? I showed this comment a few minutes ago as well. Do you have sufficient funds for more trials? So that is one question. And I think another question that is very, very interesting for me as well is we hear a lot of messaging from you, but we do not see the execution of those things. For example, approvals, or this didn't happen like Remdesivir got approved in two weeks and done. Why are there not approvals? Is this just the process and the time, or is it something else? So if these two questions I can get some update on.
Absolutely. Fair questions, both of them. First of all, in regards to funding, we do not have enough funding to conduct all these trials. We never had enough money to do any trial. We always raised funds as we needed it because we always told the public our value should be much higher. When we were at 30 cents, we raised money only $5-10 million every couple of months or so because we believe the stock should be higher. Right now, we believe the stock should be past $20 at least. That's our opinion, my opinion. And I have told Scott and the board that I will not raise money unless we get some major results that we believe we're going to get. And then we will raise money. If we have to raise and we don't get to those numbers, then we will do as we did in the past. When you talk about fundraising, you should look at the person who raised the money for the last 7-8 years and judge them based upon what they promised. I always promised Dr. Scott Kelly that I would never fail the company on raising money. Even when we were at 28 cents and almost 100,000, less than 100,000 in our account, we needed 2 million a month. And he said to me, how are you going to raise money? I said, the same way we raise always. We have quite a bit of extensive connections. Paulson, the head of Paulson, Tom Pigeon, Chris Clark, and Robert Siddiqui, 3 people that I'm very close to, and we have raised money, 200 million, and I raised 100 million on my own. That's $300 million for a smaller company. At this time, I'm rejecting offers of getting money, 40 million, 50 million, we reject it. And people get very pissed off when we don't accept those offers because we believe our stock should be at a higher value. So to answer that, no, we don't have enough money, but we do have quite a bit of cash compared to what our history. We're feeling very comfortable. We're waiting for NASDAQ to tell us how much money we need to raise, if we do need to raise anything, to go to NASDAQ, and then perhaps at that time raise money. So that's that question. The second question is in regards to Remdesivir. I hope people can at least Google these things and verify what I'm saying. FDA has a perfect, in my opinion, plan for all these drugs. If FDA at the beginning of this pandemic was starting to say, here's the approval for this product, that product, oh, that looks good, here's the approval for you, we would have had more death from drugs that don't work than we would have had from the pandemic. So they have a perfect plan, perfect track record. So we need to stop questioning FDA validity. The way they approved Gilead, NIH was behind them. Dr. Fauci was behind it. There was a lot of people who believed in that, and these are big pharmaceutical who have all kind of resources to get the job done. Well, when they look at Remdesivir, they did about 5,000 patients trials. The last trial that got them approval was 1,400. FDA didn't give them 80 patient trial like they gave us. Our phase 3 has 395 patients for approval. FDA said to us, this is a registrational trial, 395 patients. They did not give that to the big pharma. And when you talk about a lot of things, Nader, where is the approval? That's fair. But just remember, drug.com, FDA.com, AIDS.gov, everybody check it out. It takes 15 years to get an approval. Cost $1 billion to get approved. We have took the company and explored every indication that came our way, continuously went forward with all of them, and we are at the brink of getting approval. And it's been 6 years. I got this product 6 years. The big pharma gave up on it because they said it would take you 15 years to get approval for HIV. We have our BLA. We had our meeting with FDA. They give us all the clearance to give the final BLA for approval. They even said we give you a special offer. I told that to the conference in the conference call. They said, give us the part that was troublesome. Let us check it out for you before you formally give it to us so we can do this favor for you. They call it a favor. So they're doing a favor for us for that. So it's a special offer. So we are ready to get approval for that. And all of these indications we just did a trial in 2.5 months, talking about finishing something. We finished our phase 2. Now, I cannot make up data. The data has to come to us. We have to analyze. If the data is bad, for example, I can't make it up. And I thought the data was very good for giving that population. But that's where we are right now, with that situation.
Got it. So now let's start our regular discussions for various parts of the various trials and the results for those, and how do we move forward. So starting with the COVID-19 CD10 trial, mild to moderate, results in the UK, Philippines, Canada. Tell me a little bit more. When I saw the news about it, some parts of those looked very positive, some parts did not look positive. How do you see it? What are the results like? What is the current state there?
So when we talked to FDA told us that in regards to mild to moderate, this might not be a population that you want to go for phase 3, because the fact is we had other primary and secondary endpoint, but we were either as good as placebo or just a little bit better. For example, use of ventilator, it was 25% better, but it was only 2 patients. One was in 2/3 of the population, one in 1/3, which means we were better, but it just doesn't have enough p-value, statistically significant. So we found in the phase 2 what we can be effective for the mild to moderate population. That's what phase 2 is for. Investigate your product, see if you have any kind of endpoint. Now we know exactly how many patients to enroll in the moderate phase 3. We know exactly which primary endpoint to go after to be able to assure our success. And we can enroll that this year most likely and be able to go forward with it. The CD10 obviously was very fantastic. That's why we just got accepted for a 15-minute oral presentation. Dr. Sidham Raju, Dr. Otto Yang, these are big names in the field of infectious disease. Dr. Nicholas Agresti and Dr. Chris Regner. These people enrolled the patients, and they were very happy with what they saw from their patients. And Dr. Sidham Raju from Montefiore is going to be presenting that abstract in October, I believe, 6th or 8th. So people can, the whole world can see the whole results. But we thought it was, a very strong result for us.
Got it. And one more question attached to the same topic. If, let's say that the results were not good, would you have been allowed to continue on with more trials if the previous results were not good? Or the
Excellent
previous
question.
results had to be uh, good in some way to allow you to continue to do the trials?
Absolutely. First of all, is that if you have an open IND, initial new drug application, which we do have with COVID-19, you can go for any phase 2 as long as the safety is not a problem. If this trial would have a terrible safety and the placebo arm would have been much better than the Leronlimab or in regard to safety, there wouldn't be any phase 3 given to us in any way, shape, or form. So we had success, we had good safety, we improved the safety of serious adverse and adverse event. So we are ready to now finish the job, which is get the phase 3. But we might have the job being finished with the interim analysis. That's only 2-3 weeks from now.
So that's what I wanted to ask then. So for the CD12 interim analysis, tell me a little bit more. What have you touched upon that earlier as well. Do you want to dig deeper and tell us what's going on there, what is expected there, what's happening?
Yeah, so I hope everybody pay attention and perhaps Google it sometime if they don't, have confidence in what we say. In regards to interim analysis, there are two types of interim analysis for efficacy. There is a different type of interim analysis for safety. So our interim analysis for efficacy are two types. You can do a data safety monitoring board look at the efficacy, and they are unblinded, but we are not. And when they come back, they have four choices. One choice is you're done. You're not going to do the job. There are more deaths in the Leronlimab arm than placebo. Stop the trial. Don't never touch this again. We hope not. We don't get this because we already had a safety look at the data. So we're confident that this is not going to happen. God willing. The second one is that you're not going to hit your primary endpoint. You need more patients. Remdesivir had that problem. They increased the number of N. They even changed the primary endpoint because they were allowed to do that. They look at the interim results, they did. Number three, the most powerful one. If we get it, we're number one right now in the world on getting this. And that is your interim result is indicating that you are hitting your primary endpoint. Continue, finish the trial, and you will hit your primary endpoint. Number four is there is just unbelievable situation. All the deaths are happening in the placebo. Therefore, we would recommend to the FDA on the ethical basis to stop the trial. That number four is very, very difficult to get. But number three, in the pandemic era, if you are getting something from DSMB saying that you are hitting your primary endpoint, maybe, just maybe, the FDA will come back and say, maybe you want to stop and get approval. We don't know. I hope I'm not setting expectations. But just think about it. If we get that number three, which is the first time mortality has been much better in the phase 3 with injectable that we have, then we can finish the trial in the next 3 months. Our moderate population, we can start and finish the trial for 100 patients. That's all we need for, and a long hauler phase 2, we can finish the trial this year, most likely. So quite a bit of stuff we will have. I just hope we get number 3 or number 4. That's what.
Got it. And I wanted to talk a little more about the long haulers, but before I go there, I have one more question for you. And that is about the last time when we spoke, we talked about Mexico and the potential for Leronlimab to be used in other countries. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened there? I didn't hear anything more. I read a news about your meeting with MHRA for UK as well. Can you enlighten us there that what is going on?
Absolutely. Let me start with MHRA. So MHRA told us that they would like to go ahead and have us given all the data for emergency INDs. They want to give us early access use for the patients, for Leronlimab, for critical patients. They said go ahead and apply for that. That early access is something that you have to first apply for PIM. PIM is promising innovative medicine. We believe we can get that because MHRA say you probably could get that. That's equivalent to breakthrough designation in the United States. But again, you're not going to get to sell the product. This is going to be giving the product like compassionate. I want to make sure I'm not misleading anybody. So when we get PIN, which we are applying for that on Friday, we got everything put together. We signed the documents already for America. They're submitting it on Friday. And then we will get early access use perhaps in critical population. That's one thing we are doing with them. They also are going to receive tomorrow our letter for meeting on October 22nd for BLA for HIV in MHRA, and it will be also submitted to European regulatory EMA next week. Now, these are very strong because HIV in Europe is a lot easier to get approval, in our opinion, than in America. But we are going with 350 milligrams, the dose that we had our primary endpoint. There's no complication of two different trials. That's right. If that goes well, we could get approval over there for HIV sooner. We could get approval for COVID-19. So we will find out about that. So in regards to COVID-19, if our interim analysis is allowed to be shared by the public, also MHRA will get that, and European regulatory. We don't know if we're going to have that, because if we want to have that kind of interim analysis, you need to pay a penalty, statistical penalty. So we are working on all of those. We will update everybody. But in regards to Mexico, we gave them a protocol that they asked for. We translated for them, and we're just waiting for them to open at least sites. But in UK, we just signed a work order to get 5 sites, and we could go all the way to 10 sites for COVID-19. So we're working all these projects. And when people say, why don't you finish something? I said, well, look at how many companies with a small resource of 300 million so far have got ourselves to the point of approval for so many indications. It costs $1.5 billion to get one indication approved. So I hope everybody put all those in perspective.
Got it. Thank you very much. So we touched upon the long haulers a couple of times. Dr. Kelly, is there a trial coming up? When is it starting? Is that the blood-brain barrier discussion? What is the outcome you're thinking? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we're finished with the protocol for the long haulers, and we're going to submit it to the FDA and get started ASAP. And I think we've had so many patients contact us about this particular problem, and we think it's going to be a trial that fills very quickly.
And I think we're going to have that submitted to FDA. The synopsis will go to FDA either tomorrow or day after tomorrow, and then the full protocol will go to FDA after we finalize with FDA what our primary endpoint, secondary endpoint. This is a phase 2. Again, if you don't have primary endpoint, but we have some secondary endpoint, you could do a phase 3. But for long hauler, there is no product at all. For the other indication, there are, but this indication, there isn't.
Got it. So continuing on, tell me a little bit. I heard this anecdote from someone about the Leronlimab blood-brain barrier, stroke, and possibility of Leronlimab useful in strokes as well. Can you tell us?
This is a lot of research that was done outside of CytoDyn, actually. When we looked at stroke, it became very interesting because we've seen this in cancer as well. For example, like normal prostate tissue or breast tissue doesn't have CCR5, but when it goes malignant transformation, then you get an upregulation of the CCR5 receptor. When they started studying this in the brain, they realized that there is a CCR5 overexpression in things like stroke. And then they found out that CCR5, antagonists improve motor recovery after stroke and in cognition and traumatic brain injury, and that the Delta 32 mutation is actually protective for stroke. And so that's why we're thrilled about this blood-brain barrier. If we have the potential here to treat central nervous system disorders, it opens up everything, and including MS and glioblast multiform, like tumors that we're looking at in our basket trials, et cetera. It opens up the world to us, we believe.
Got it. Thank you very much. Continuing on, so the Nash trial. Any timeline on the Nash trial?
Yeah, so we have the central lab kits that are going out in mid-October. That's moving along well. We expect our first patient to be injected in somewhere around mid-November to late November. We have had a lot of requests for patients to enter that trial as well. We have anticipation that's going to go relatively quickly compared to other trials because we've had a really, really strong interest in proceeding with our Nash trial.
Got it. And one more topic I want to touch upon, and then I'm going to go for Cool Beans questions as well. So, and these will be even more interesting. So, future of the cancer trials for Leronlimab, where do we stand with that?
So we have signed with the Creative Microtechnology a work order to do complete analysis of the markers, the markers that they have, which is the CTC, circulating tumor cells, the camel, and the CCR5s and dots on the camels. Those are all going to be analyzed for all the patients that we have, and then we're going to report that and maybe even publish that. So the basket trial that we have, we enrolled so quickly thanks to Dr. Jacob Lalazari at Quest Clinical, and we have 11 patients. And we're going to follow these patients very carefully, and we need to get CT scan and MRI of these patients. When the COVID-19 came, our cancer trial got kind of disrupted quite a bit. Now it's getting back on track, and we can't wait to get these results and see where we are. And we also have increased the dose. My mother-in-law has done better than anybody else in this trial because she's on 700 milligram. Everybody else started with 350 milligram, and now the basket trial is 525 milligram because we had to do per protocol 3 patients with 350, make sure they're all good, then go to the higher dose. And because of that, we got nobody got the dose of 700 milligram, which my family.
Got it. So ready for some of the Cool Bean questions. So these are the questions that were on YouTube, on the Twitter. Some of these we have already answered. You've already touched upon them. But for the completion's sake, I'm just going to go through them. We can quickly, rapidly answer some of those. For some of those, we can simply say that, hey, we've just answered that earlier. So the very first question there was Remdesivir versus Leronlimab. Remdesivir got in quickly. You are still out. You're still trying to prove yourself. You've talked about it before as well. Any additional comment?
Well, just real quick, if there's 100 patients, 50 patients in placebo and 50 patients on a drug, and you got 51 doing good and 49, 51 versus 49 won't get approval. But if you got 10,000, that 51 versus 49 would be statistically significant. They had a little bit improvement. They did thousands of patients, and they were able to do. Congratulations to them for that. We don't have those kind of resources, but we have a product that's about 1,000 times better than Remdesivir.
Got it. So one more question here on the YouTube side. So I'm going to switch between YouTube and Twitter. So the question is from Ian here. Question, Dr. Bean, for COVID-19 CD12, severe to critical, what is the p-value boundary to get a halt for efficacy at interim? 195 patients.
So it's 195 patients, and the p-value has to be less than 0.5 to be statistically significant. If we say to the FDA that we like to be allowed to share the data, the number of patients who die versus the number of patients who die, and we pay a statistical penalty. What is that? That means instead of 0.05, perhaps, or when the study is over, we have to have 0.045. We don't want to get to that point, but statistically significant will be analyzed, p-value will be analyzed, and given to the DSMB only. If we pay the penalty, we get to share the data.
Got it. Thank you. A couple of terms here that I want to clarify, because I see on Twitter there were some comments about the emergency investigational drug approval versus compassionate use. Some folks had asked, some Cool Beans had asked, that is Leronlimab being given out for compassionate use? So can you first tell us what is the difference between compassionate use and emergency use authorization? What are these two things?
So emergency IND is an IND, which is initial new drug application, that is carried by the physician, not the sponsor, not the company. And there are patients who are in critical condition, like Dr. Sitam Raju called the FDA, the very first patient, said, my patient's going to die. There's no other. So they he convinced the FDA, and after several patients, then EINDs were given left and right. Compassionate use is an open protocol that is allowing anybody who wants to take this, their doctor can say, I want it, it's not a critical situation, but we believe this is a good product, we want to use it, and they would be able to use it. None of these data are good for approval. So that's a problem we will have. You will only get to see the results, obviously, and get confidence of what you want to do. But that's about all you get.
So are you giving out Leronlimab for compassionate use?
For cancer trials, we have 18 patients in compassionate use, but not in COVID-19. We only had emergency IND, which FDA says concentrate rolling everybody EIND into your CD12 so you can finish the trial.
Got it. And here is a question from the collective, and I think we talked about it last time as well when we spoke. What is the uplistings update for NASDAQ?
So every day when I go to the office, the first thing I do when I'm on my way, I call Mike Mahal and say, what in the world is going on? Give me the update every 5 minutes. I'm so eager for that. But we have to be very careful and work with the exchange. We have done that. The exchange told us that we are ready to give you our final answer about all the analysis. There was a lot of work going on, and we are hoping to get that answer either tomorrow or the day after. That's what the exchange told us.
Got it. Thank you. So one more question from a cool bean, and that is for CD10. The question was, are you going to publish some data, some granular documents, some publication, some article? When can we see more data there?
So thank you for that question, because that brings us to a very important point. We have 3 manuscripts submitted already. One of them is already accepted, they're just doing corrections. So doctors that did emergency IND, 3 manuscripts have been submitted. For CD10, the manuscript is completely finished. We have hired a group of doctors, very well known for manuscript, to just work on our manuscript. And they have just finished the CD10 manuscript rough draft. It has gone to the PIs as of today, and we will finalize that and submit it for publication by the end of the day. So
by the end of
the next week, we should be able to submit it. It might take a week or 2 more, but we are shooting for the end of next week. But I want to be very careful about this. We have a manuscript for our extension of monotherapy patients who went 6 years with no drug. That manuscript is going to be finalized very soon. It's already been worked by Dr. Jonas Sasha. We have a manuscript for CD10 that we just talked about. We have a manuscript for CD02, our combination therapy that we finished everything. Some of the patients are 4 years on extension on those trials. Remember, our primary endpoint and safety, we got 81% responders. The last drug approved for that population was 43%. Pfizer drug, Bloodbrain, was 45%. So that's amazing. We also are working on the manuscript for CD03 or monotherapy. So a bit of stuff is going to come out in the next few months. We got a lot of wood in the iron, and wood in the fire. We're gonna have, just like always, many things happening, and we're going forward and telling everything. But when it comes to approval, we shouldn't expect every year 1 or 2 drugs. Pfizer doesn't have that. Gilead doesn't have that. So
got it. So switching gear to CD12, this has been a question that is here as well from William, and then this has been on Twitter as well. How is your recruitment for CD12 going?
So we slowed down a little bit because of the interim analysis took a lot of our focus for that. But we continue to enroll. So we are right now sitting at close to 220. I think we are 214 or 215 as of last what I told to Dr. Dodi. But we are going to expedite that quite a bit. If we need to finish the trial, we believe there is no doubt in our mind that we can finish the trial by the end of the year and give the full data to the FDA for approval. And if we have an interim analysis that says you are going to hit your primary endpoint, finish the trial, God willing we get that, that means by this year we will have our approval. The most important population for mortality, which is the primary endpoint.
Yeah, and we'll be adding more sites like Nader said earlier in the UK, so we should be able to speed that up.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you very much. Continuing on. So this, again, you have talked about this before as well. I wanted this question to be asked again within this heading. So there is a question on the Twitter about the FDA and MHRA. So the question is there any indication that they are actually interested, or are you actually prepared for them? So of course, there are two parties in there. There is you and your data, and then there are these agencies. Are they interested? They're actually interested. Do you have data that actually is creating traction? Some more color there.
MHRA immediately said to us, we're really interested on the critical and severe population. Can you share your emergency IND patients? We'd like to give you early access if your data is as strong as that you have summarized in the summary that you gave us. So there is a lot of interest. If we're talking only about CD10, I already said to everybody that FDA says the results that you gave us does not qualify you for emergency use authorization at this time. We asked them, can we go with the phase 3 with moderate, because patients with symptom score of 4 or higher are considered moderate, and we hit it endpoint in 3 days, which is the most crucial day. And they said, send us the information, your protocol, and so forth. So that's on program. MHRA, they also said this product would be very interesting in the critical and severe population. So we're working also with Philippines, and with Philippines, they will have, they are working with us. They have to ask for data. We're sending it to them. So that's where we are. I'm not worried about trying to push CD10 and tell everybody to get approval for that. I don't think it's going to happen. But what's going to happen is we got tremendous positive results that now allows us to have 3 clinical trial potential for COVID-19 in this year. Now, if getting approval in 6 months versus 2.5 months is a problem for some shareholders, they should really sell their shares.
Got it.
Yeah, one thing I'll add, if it's okay, Nader, is, when we're dealing with the MHRA and we're dealing with the FDA, there's really a commonality of all the same questions they're asking us. We need these studies. We need to see your CMC. We need your non-clinical. We need this. So I think it's really important for people to understand that all this work that we're putting in right now, we're building such a solid foundation for going forward. And as we get more data and show efficacy data across our different things that we're going after our platform, if we show it in Nash or we show it in cancer, we show it, it's all there. I mean, it's all there just to give them. And I think that's a really important point for people to understand.
When the stock was sitting at 30 cents in the 2-year period of time, Paulson, the head of Paulson always told me, so what do you think the future? Why doesn't anybody believe in you? Your stock should be at least past $1. I said, our stock will go past 10 times this value. They said, when? You always keep saying it. You keep saying that. When it happened, they were shocked. Right in their front of them, it's something spectacular happened. Now I'm saying it again. We have tremendous amount of good potential that we have built up. Pay attention to fundamental, as I said before. Blink the wrong way and start listening to naysayer without any foundation, and you might be disappointed.
Got it. So I'm seeing this one comment repeatedly, and that is about the Operation Warp Speed. So tell me a little bit more about that.
So, when the news comes out from other sources but CytoDyn, people should not pay attention to it. We did not say anything about we met with Operation Warp Speed. There are things that we do not talk about unless we're allowed to talk about. And then we got the news that not only we met with them, they rejected us. and that didn't happen. We did not get any rejections from anybody. And that, gives us a little bit concerned that people are not paying attention to fundamentals. They keep paying attention to the word from this person or that person. And please, if it's not from CytoDyn, that means it doesn't have any balance.
Got it. So there's a question from Thrifty Cents here. Is there a concern that if it takes till the end of the year for the approvals, by that time there will be other drugs? And I had a similar question, not exactly the same, was about hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, that if we have cheaper drugs, available drugs, where does that put Leronlimab?
So I hope there is other drugs to help save humanity from this terrible pandemic. But leronlimab is not dependent on the COVID-19. COVID-19 just give us the potential. And if anybody thinks by the end of the year COVID-19 is going to be gone, I pray for them and their wish to come true. God help us. Because if the pandemic is over, leronlimab can glorify in all the indication that we have started. Our cancer trial could be back on track. But unfortunately, the news out there is this pandemic is not going away, at least till end of 2021. The leronlimab corrects the immune system. Dr. Haristitam Retrofol says your product has indication inflammation, not just the RANTs goes down. That's one aspect. Don't put all your focus on RANTs. It's a lot more than that. And it's something that corrects the immune system. That's why we see so many different indications. But Scott, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just plenty of room for effective therapeutics. I really do. We don't even know 100% sure how effective the vaccines are going to be. I mean, you have 31.5 million people infected and 970,000 deaths. I mean, there's plenty of room for effective therapeutics. And what we've seen out there so far is not something that is very dominant, and most have failed. So we're very pleased at where we are at this point.
Got it. Makes sense. And last couple of questions. I want to shout out to James Kelly. James, I had seen your questions, and somehow in my screen here in this stream, there are so many comments that those questions I've lost. Can you please ask your questions once more? Meanwhile, I'm going to ask this question. So one question is about the monotherapy with HIV. So what is the status with the monotherapy? Is there any other drug, for example, Trogarzo? So any comparative data that you can share?
Trogarzo, I was very close to the person who got that product to the level that he got, that's Dr. Stanley Lewis, and he was amazed with the leronlimab potential. Trogarzo did exactly the same trial that we did. Combination therapy. They had p-value significant for their history, and then they got the 6-month suppression of viral load at 43%, and they got approved. And when they wanted to get approval, they got their PDUFA date. They did not get refused to file. Once they got to get the approval, they had problem with manufacturing that delayed them 8 months. Now, we don't have problem with manufacturing, but 6 months safety suppression of viral load was 81%. Patients who went past that, they're now going 4 years with suppressed viral load. These are patients who almost had AIDS, a very sick patient. So with that said, Trogarzo doesn't have other indications, but that as latest, what I have heard latest. And leronlimab has a totally different outlook, potential indications.
Got it. My second last question, the HIV BLA status with the FDA and UK. Any update on that?
Absolutely. So MHRA, I am so excited with UK and EMA from Europe to get the BLA. The BLA is going to be submitted for 350 milligram. We are asking for a meeting for October 22nd to meet with MHRA and discuss pre-BLA. That means they're going to tell us on October 22nd, we need this, and this, and you can have your BLA submitted. Final approval. That's given. In regards to FDA, we will submit our BLA as soon as we get the CD03, the monotherapy completed, the data completed, we put in the right format. Then we give it to the FDA, let them look at it for 30 days and tell us you're not going to have any problems, submit it officially. We do that. That's a special gift that they gave us. We don't have any worries in regards to approval because our safety, thank God, is very well. So when you have BLA being submitted, people need to focus on that fundamental. Not only just UK and Europe going to get our BLA. We are submitting to Philippines, we're submitting to Canada, and we are going to be submitting to other countries also.
Got it. So the last question, and this may actually be a little hard, but I think that this has been asked so many times that it is interesting to ask this, and that is, did someone block Dr. Patterson's paper from publication?
So what is blog? What do they mean? That means blog.
So,
Blog. Oh, and so Dr. Bruce Patterson has to be reached out. To be fair to him, people need to ask him that question. We enjoyed working with Dr. Patterson. Dr. Patterson had benefit for us. He's the one that he told us about the mechanism of action that we are going after already. It's very strong. He was beneficial. We were beneficial to him, hopefully. We had a very good contact for him. We gave his laboratory a very important order based upon what he was getting. So we had a good relationship, and that's all. Now his paper needs to be asked by people from him. Our papers, we got 5 papers that is now, 3 of them already submitted. One of them got accepted, and we're going to announce it very soon. But the other 2, CD10 and CD02 and CD01, actually, 3 of them is going to be submitted shortly. So our paper is going to be 6 of them, and we're going to talk about those, whether they get accepted or not. We believe all of them will be accepted.
Got it. So that was the last question. I still have one more question that repeatedly appeared, and that was about the Leronlimab and Canada, Philippines, Israel, and other countries. Any update outside of the US?
So
especially Canada, Philippines.
Sure. Canada will be submitted soon. We have been in touch with them, and they're asking for the application. It's going to be submitted very soon. With the Philippines, we had got the news that they have asked for all this data of emergency IND and CD10. And our company, the company that's working with us, had us sign a licensing agreement with the pharmaceutical over there for distribution before we could submit that to their FDA. They require that, so we signed that already, and now they are going to talk about that. I'm very, very positive about Philippines. We are also going to file the HIV audit. But other than that, as we go forward, we update everybody. We're not shy about updating as much as possible. So people can say the stock jumps to $20. We wish we would have known more, because when we went to $3 and $7 and $10 from 30 cents, a lot of people said, "I wish you would have updated us and let us know, so we would have sell our shares." So we don't want that to happen to our owners, the shareholders.
Got it. So that brings us to our end of the discussion. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope that the cool beans here enjoyed the discussion. So I keep looking on the side. That is where the commentary is going on as we were discussing, and on the Twitter as well. So once again, thank you very much, Dr. Pourhassan. Thank you very much, Dr. Scott Kelly.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for having me.
So much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.